Happy birthday, Bok. Belated.
Next year pa.
Related.
Okay.
Every other yan.
Kaya pala.
No, kaya pala. Sige. Hindi, pero sige, saka na natin pag-usapan yan dahil may mahalagang guest na nag-aantay.
Oo nga naman. Oo nga naman.
Sige,
Change
teka,
topic.
nakailag ka dito. We have tonight with us the new PNP Chief, Police General Jonardo Carlos. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir.
Magandang gabi po. Good evening po sa ating lahat.
Magandang gabi, sir.
Thank you for inviting me to your program, The Chiefs.
Opo, siyempre naman. Alam niyo naman po, hindi po kayo ang unang bagong PNP chief na nag-guest dito, and always, ito naman parati ang tanong namin, ano po bang magagawa at ano ang plano nyo in the limited time that every PNP chief has?
Well, I said that I'll just focus on the task ahead, which is the national and local elections come May 9, 2022, and the rest are all programs that I will continue. The programs started by the previous chiefs, PNP, include the recent the programs of Sir Eliazar, the programs of Sir Archie Gamboa and the Bolsinas, including the one of Sir Picoy Cascolan and Bato de la Rosa.
And syempre naman po, buti na banggit niyo po yung mga predecessors niyo, particularly under the Duterte administration. Of course, when we talk about programs, there's no bigger program for the PNP under the Duterte administration than the war on drugs. That has had very clear chapters from the start of General Bato de la Rosa. What will the final chapter of the war on drugs under the Duterte administration be like?
Well, we'll continue the supply and demand approach, reduction. So we'll continue anti-drug operations to take away the drugs from the hands of the drug lords and big personalities, drug personalities. But we will also be doing a lot of our demand reduction to be able to take care of the surrenderers or surrenderies, especially that we can now continue our recovery programs of taking care of the surrenderers and making sure that they go back to the society in such a way they can be productive also. So we will focus more on our helping in the barangay development program and the barangay anti-drug clearing, the anti-drug barangay clearing program with the Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency. We will make sure that our presence in the barangays are going to be helping our stronger or established barangay anti-drug abuse councils. So this is where I will always be coordinating with the Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency under Director General Wilkins Villanueva.
Sir, let me rephrase it, sir. How different will your finale version 2022 be compared to Mr. De Bolsinas' program and, for example, Bato de Rosa's program? Kasi you spoke about clearing barangays, which is also part of their program as well. And the same goes with the rehabilitation, which is also part of their program. So ano po yung pagkakaiba? What changes do you plan to put in or reforms do you plan to put in?
Well, basically, not much. This is more on having a better, the continuity minus the tokhang effort. So more on preparing the barangays on taking care of their respective areas by having a stronger and active barangay anti-drug abuse council and the recovery programs for the surrenderers. So ang atin pong gagawing supply reduction is hitting hard on the drug personalities that are bringing in this the illegal drugs. So we will coordinate regularly with the Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency when it comes to anti-drug operations and yung amin pong Memorandum of Understanding or MOA with the PIDEA, regularly we will be coordinating and reviewing it if needed.
General, as we all know, ang pinakamalaking criticism ng drug war are the abusers. Di ba? Now you mentioned na ayaw nyo na ng tokhang. Anong ibig sabihin nun exactly? Saka how do you plan to reduce opportunities for police abuses in the conduct of the war on drugs?
Well, number one is the well-coordinated operation and declared, meaning it is yung coordination form. So before they conduct operation, they have to fill up this form and we know where they are. Plus the fact that yung the words na nabago na kasi yung meaning ng tukhang, napakaganda nung yung intention, but this became now a parang negative meaning as used by the perception in the public. So I'm not saying that the program of Tokang is not good. They're good. However, the use of the word nagbago. So ang amin pong gagawin dyan ay yung pong taking care of our barangays and the surrenderers. Yun po yung sa amin pong demand reduction and the supply reduction. We will continue to conduct anti-drug operations. Fitting naman ito yung mga malalaki at hindi na po tayo. Yung level, at the level of yung street level, it will be under, the operation will be done by our station drug enforcement unit. So mas tutok tayo doon sa mas malalaking volume or quantity of drugs, which we passed already our PDEG, the Philippine National Police Drug Enforcement Group.
Yung actual meaning ng tokhang, yung kumakatok at tatanungin nyo yung tao, meron bang user dyan? Yun, wala na yun.
We will not do that. We will have more coordination with the barangay officials under the Barangay Anti-Drug Abuse Council. Ang lalagay po namin dyan will be our police sa barangay that will coordinate their presence and coordinate with the local officials in every barangay. And then in coordination with the local government units on how we will take care of those who have surrendered already to the program and how we can make them productive members again of the society. Wala na yung stigma dapat na ma-recover natin sila, maka-recover sila. Where they're not anymore into drugs and making sure that they can go back to the community and be productive members of the community.
General, I wonder if that is an effect of, well, the uproar against the drug war, no, under the Duterte administration na syempre yung PNP ang pangunahing enforcing arm. At ngayon nga nasa ICC na ang case, no? And yan po ba yung biglang pag-atras ng konti, no, sa tokhang strategy? At sabihin na natin na talagang medyo pag pinag-uusapan ngayon, drug war, hindi na siya in the same scale as when it began, no, 5.5 years ago. How was the police force affected by this uproar, no? Yung parang syempre, the charges of human rights abuses, mainly among the police, and now sa ICC, no? Sa dami ng mga namatay, kahit na even if we use your figure, which is 6,000 plus.
Well, again, kung may mali sa hanay ng apitang PNP, we make them answerable. That's why the investigation, we're cooperating with the investigation by the DOJ. So we've done our part in investigating them, and if we find them to be at fault, we make them answer for the mistake. Number one. Pangalawa, yung numbers kasi amplified, hindi naman nila bine-verify. So there's an effort really to discredit it. Sabihin na natin, yan na talagang nangyari. And even if we keep you giving our numbers, sasabihin nila iba. They show us what is case number 1,000 and we will look up our record. You show us what is case 1,300,000 o yun ang naging nangyari. So sa amin po, nagtatrabaho kami Unfortunately, meron pong ganitong pangyayari. Ngunit pag may mali po yung pulis at napatunayan po na ang nagkamali ay yung ating pong alagad ng batas o ng ating pulis, panagutin natin. Kaya nga po nagsasagawa tayo ng investigasyon. At base po yan sa facts of that particular case, hindi yung ilalamsam natin na ganito ang nangyayari sa ating kampanyan sa droga.
Yeah.
Ang sa amin po ay from the start of the campaign, we've been adjusting or doing adjustment to make sure that ito ay tumutugon doon sa panahon na amin pong ini-implement itong ating campaign against illegal drugs. So, at the end of the day, we will be just doing our job under the authorized by the law and as partner of the Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency in the implementing of such law.
How
General,
do you feel about,
General, outside of the,
yung-
I mean, beyond individual or particular cases, we do understand what you're saying, na yung iba naman dyan, isolated or mga kaso, and when it comes to specific cases, you're willing to deal with it. But clearly, there's also a systemic problem. It was the Department of Justice,
Yes,
just in
exactly.
February, that told the UN Human Rights Council na more than half of police operations that they audited, of thousands that they audited, more than half did not comply with rules of engagement. Kulang-kulang ang mga report. Yung reports na mga nanlaban, may mga kaduda-duda at maraming butas sa mga report. This goes beyond the question of specific cases. It does go to a question of systems, if not culture. How much of that has been addressed? And how much of it can still be addressed until the end of your term?
Well, we will continue to cooperate with the investigating body. Sabi nga namin, kapag mali po, pasagutin natin ano yung kaso na yan. So, ang tanong dyan ay, nasunod ba yung ating pong rules of engagement? If not, then we charge that particular person. If there's one who, the cause of the death of the suspect was in such a way na may violation of law, pasagutin po natin. Wala ho kaming problema doon, kaya ho kami nakikipag-ugnayan, nakikipagtulungan po tayo doon sa nag-iimbestiga. At ayun po ang sa amin po ay we follow our procedures and we make sure that they followed the instructions. Yung ating wala ho kasing illegal na binigay na kautusan sa ating pong mga personnel on the ground. So pag nagkamali kasi yung the implementation is really bawat isang insidente mag-iiba yan eh. So dapat ang ginawa ho natin dyan is you keep on giving them reminders, we keep on making sure that they understand the rules of engagement. At the end of the day, the actors in that particular case are the one that we look and investigate kung may mali. Karamihan naman po ay kung ang findings is half of that, tingnan natin isa-isa.
But
At alamin natin ano ba yung nangyari.
But General, what would be a fair indicator for the public na umaandar nga po to, that it's being addressed? Because we were talking about the police would acknowledge 6,000 killed, di ba? And if we take the statement of the Department of Justice that more than half, then we're looking at about 3,000 cases. Would it be a fair indicator, for example, for people to say na, you know, if we start seeing thousands or at least hundreds of cases actually being filed, if we start seeing thousands or at least hundreds of policemen actually being punished, maybe that's an indicator that it's really being addressed. Pero nasa na po ba tayo when you talk about not just individual cases being addressed, but the totality of gaano kalawak at gaano kaseryoso at gaano kabilis talaga nare-resolve itong mga to?
Well, kapag kami po ang nag-iimbestiga at ibinibigay naman po namin sa DOJ, higher authority, we will coordinate and we will comply sa kanila po. Kaya nga po ang sabi po ng former chief ni Sir Gilor Eliasar, yung initial case, alam namin may problema yon. So tuloy ho, ibinigay natin. Kung sinasabi po na half of that ay mayroon silang nakikitang paglabag o pagkakamali, kunin natin, alamin natin, isa-isa yan hanggang sa maibigay ho natin. Ang tanong ho dyan ay Sino ang pananagutin? Ang tao na nagkamali o gumawa ng mali o ang organisasyon?
Well, related to the drug war, may bago pong challenge ngayon kasi we're running out of time. Bibilisan ko na. May bagong challenge ngayon sa inyo. May binanggit si President Duterte na there's a candidate who is using cocaine. Kaya lang, sabi niya kanina naman na bakit daw hindi inaaresto ng pulis. Sabi niya, kasi yung mga mayayaman gumagamit, nagda-drugs yan sa yate o kaya up in the air. Now, we understand the PNP has started background checks on the presidential aspirants, Paano ba to? Are you actually expecting something to come out of it na ma-identify nyo to and you can pin down this candidate?
Yes, I already tasked our PDEG and look at the data or the records that we have. And sino ba ito? Once na the records or the information points to the particular person, then we do a verification and case build up. So, saan ba siya? Sino yan? Kailan niya ginagawa yung illegal na aktibidades niya? And if we can conduct an operation to stop him from violating the law, then we will do that. So the PDEG has been tasked already. And then I told Remus Medina, Brigadier General Remus Medina, to coordinate with the different intelligence units and even the PDEA if there's anything that they have. And that's pinpoint. And then kapag nasaan, kailan niya kinakandak yung kanyang illegal na activity until we be able to do the all necessary action to be able to stop him from violating the law.
Sir, I
Pero
suppose
may
you're...
Ano po ba is
Wala man lang bang bulong from President Duterte?
may
Wala ba
intel daw.
SOP yan na kasi kung meron siyang confidential information about a crime, so, di ba, the use of cocaine, hindi ba niya yan sineshare dapat sa law enforcement?
I think it was already in that list. Kaya nire-review po namin. Hindi ko naman po pwedeng sabihin sa inyo kung sino po yung sa tingin namin ay itong pinatutukuyan ng ating presidente. But definitely, we have an idea. Ang sa amin lang po, ayaw ho namin magsalita hanggang hindi ho kami magkakaroon ng definite action to stop that particular person from violating the drug law. So sabi ko nga po, kung makuha namin siya at ma-stop namin siya sa kanyang ginagawang illegal, then that's the time we will tell you who is this person is.
Yes, sir. So do I get you right na there is a presidential candidate who is in your list of drug users, in your current list of drug users? Is that correct? I know you don't want to name him yet, pero...
Or her.
Well, him ang sinabi ng Pangulo eh.
Okay, him pala. Sige.
Pero sir, ganun ho ba? That you have a list and there's a presidential candidate who is in that list?
No, what I said is we will review the data that we have from 2016. So if I ask you now, do you know that person? Can you name him now?
But
Well,
I
sir,
guess the
Tell me.
question...
And then we will do the operation.
Pero yun po yung tanong, sir.
Sir,
Have
kayo
you asked the
intelligence,
president? Have you asked the
Yes,
president
yeah.
kung sino yan?
Can't you ask the president?
Ma'am, we follow a command line. At my level, will I ask the president? If I have the chance and the president will allow me, I will ask. But at the same time, you have to understand this is the commander-in-chief. Hindi kami, it's a presidential information. I ask you now, you know the person? If you know the person, you tell me. We will operate and we will see if your information are true or we can conduct an operation against that particular person. Yun po sinasabi namin dito na hindi ho kami magsasalita, but gagawa po kami ng aksyon.
Opo, and general, nobody is, wala naman po nagpipilit sa inyo sabihin yung pangalan dito and so on. Pero ito rin naman po kasi in all seriousness pinanggagalingan ng tanong and why people are saying, why can't, officials have said, hindi, may sariling intelligence ang Pangulo magtiwala na lang tayo sa Pangulo and so on. And marami na po, I'm sure nakita niyo na po, marami pong nagtao nagsabi, bakit pagka mahirap, konting kibot, ano ka agad yan? Parang action agad, patay ka agad yan mga yan. Pagka mahihirap, in this case, supposedly, a presidential candidate, politiko, wala. Parang walang diretsong sagot na kakasuhan ba yan, hahanapin ba yan, I mean, I'm sure what you're asking us, marami nang sumasagot sa TV, sumisigaw sa TV ngayon yung mga tao. Kaya kong hulaan kung sino yung sinasabi ng Pangulo. Di ba? Pero ang pinanggagalingan talaga, hindi sa alam namin yung sagot. Ang tanong ng mga tao, bakit pagka mayayaman, nasa amin yung burden na kami magbibigay ng ebidensya samantalang nagsalita na yung Pangulo?
Again, I think that's a wrong, I will tell you, mali po. Kapag meron ng impormasyon, whether ordinaryong tao o mataas na tao, ina-actionan po namin yan. Yun po yung aming, ang pamamaraan ay siguraduhin po namin na kami ay may tamang impormasyon at kami po ay magbabalidate at kung yan po ay kumpleto at kami ay makakapag-take ng action to stop him from violating the law, whether he is high up there or he is down in the social ladder or yung kanyang status, gagawin po namin yan.
Okay.
So, ang sa amin lang po, ayaw naming gusto niyo yung pagpangalan kami ngayon. Hindi ko gagawin yan. Tatrabahuin na lang po namin yan.
Yes,
Kung
sir.
alam mo ninyo, sige, who can tell us? Who can tell us from down, sumisigaw na po, alam nila, do they have enough information and to confirm that information that this particular person as the one being alluded by the President in his statement.
But General, ito po yung kabilang banda. And this time naman, in all seriousness, in fairness to all presidential candidates, what if you look into it and then you realize na hindi totoo? What if you look into it and you investigate and you realize that we come to the conclusion that President Duterte was speaking and tarnishing presidential candidates with no actual basis and with no actual evidence? What do we make of President Duterte's statements then?
Then, what we find out, we will report it to the Commander-in-Chief.
To him?
In effect, you're telling him that he was wrong.
As iba kasi yung kanyang lawak ng kanyang paggada ng impormasyon. Sa amin, ito yung aming nalaman at iba, pwede po namin i-report yan sa ating pong Commander-in-Chief and the President. Hindi po kami maaaring sinasabi ko nga po, hanggang kami ay sigurado, we will just work and be able to do our part to enforce the law.
And that's, I think that's very fair, sir. Actually, nobody really expects you to name any names. In the same way that nobody in media is naming names because that would be irresponsible on our part. That is why we also ask you as well if you've networked with the president. Kasi nga, in the end, the president is making an accusation against a presidential candidate who may or may not become the next president. And of course, you are looking at huge stakes here. So I suppose that is also driving your interest in knowing the truth behind the president's statements.
Yes, when he made that information, immediately we tasked already the PDEC kasi sila po yung unit that are really the one na atin pong tinatask to do the anti-drug operation. So, ganun po yung ating ginagawa. Kung mayroon po kami, ako, for example, mayroon po akong pagduda na ito yung tao na to, i-verify ko rin, titingnan ko rin. So, kaya nga ang challenge nga po, if you know it, tell us. That's an additional information. And let us work, kami po, let's work on it. Mag-confer kami sa PIDEA. What do you have there? Mag-confer kami sa aming intelligence units. What do you have there pertaining to this information? If given the chance, may bigay sa amin from the other units, then we start working on the subject if indeed yun na nga po, i-validate at we will take the necessary action for him to stop violating the law.
General, may takers na ba ang mungkahi ninyo na mag-volunteer sana ang mga candidates na magpa-drug test? Meron na bang kumagat? Kasi magandang suggestion yan.
Opo, ang sa amin po ay we encourage them to show na yung kanila pong willingness to be open at to show that they are really drug-free. The same way that we undergo regular, random, and annual drug tests to make sure that our personnel are also drug-free. So kung tayo po ay, we just encourage them. Alam namin na wala batas na magre-require sa kanila na
Yes.
magpakita ng na sila ay free from drugs, but it's something that show that the willingness to show I am clean, di ba?
Oo nga,
ho
wala
yan
pang nagvo-volunteer. Wala pa?
Oh.
Wala pa ba?
well, it's their call. Ang sa amin po is we're just encouraging the way we're doing it also in the Philippine National Police na we're conducting our regular drug test among our personnel para may pakita na wala rin po kaming we have personnel who are into drugs, be able to identify them and be able to charge them before the court.
Okay. PNP Chief Police General Jonardo Carlos. Sir, maraming salamat po, General.
Maraming salamat
Salamat,
po.
sir.
Magandang gabi.
Ingat, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Please stay with us. The Chiefs will be right back.
Welcome back to the Chiefs here on One News, and now with us is Health Spokesperson and Undersecretary Maria Rosario Belhere. Yusek Belhere, thank you for joining us and welcome back to the Chiefs.
Good
Good
evening.
evening po.
ma'am.
Magandang gabi po. Good evening po.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, nagsimula today ang A2 and part of A3 na booster shots. Kamusta po yung rate of vaccination, so boostering ng A2 and A3?
Yes, as for now, we are still consolidating the numbers, no. But there had been a lot of senior citizens and some, those with comorbidities who went to our vaccination sites today. So hopefully in the coming days, dadami na po iyan for the booster shots for seniors and immunocompromised individuals. Kumukuha pa ho rin kasi ng clearance yung mga immunocompromised individuals.
Ma'am, para lang malinaw, no, hindi lahat ng A3 pwede na kagad, no? Kasi nung nakaraan kasi yung A3 lahat ng may hika, lahat ng may allergy nagpuntahan sa bakunahan. Biglang lahat nagka-asthma
Yes, sir. No? So we just like to clarify that what we have recommended and what we are implementing right now is based on science and evidence. And for now, what is recommended would be to give additional dose or third doses for immunocompromised individuals based on the list that we have. Hindi pa ho lahat ng A3 ay kasama.
Pero paano yung mga elderly? Do they need to register online? Pwede bang walk-in? Kasi may announcement din kanina na they can get their boosters anywhere.
Yes.
Paano? Pwede bang walk-in yon?
Yes, tama po yan, ma'am. No? So for the boosters for senior citizens, they can just go anywhere. Just bring their vaccination cards and they will be given their boosters. But it's different para dun po sa may mga immunocompromised states because they have to be cleared by their physicians first and has to be registered in the local government.
So pwede siyang walk-in pala, yung elderly.
Pwede po, ma'am. Pwede po. At hindi po kailangan doon sa mismong binakunahan siya for the primary series siya pupunta. Maari pong sa iba rin. Basta dala niya yung vaccination card.
Ay, kailangan pala ng doctor's clearance yung A3 na immunocompromised before they can get their boosters.
Yes, sir, because the attending physicians will also give that advice to the immunocompromised individual kung ano yung appropriate na ibibigay sa kanya na third dose. So, it can be homologous kasi or heterologous.
Pero kailangan 6 months from the second dose for the 2 doses.
That's right, ma'am. So, our...
Except for Johnson and Johnson yata.
Yes.
Di ba, ma'am?
Yes,
and
ma'am.
Sputnik.
Our EUA specifically states that the time period for the boosters will be 6 months after your primary series for all the types of vaccines except for Johnson and Johnson, wherein after 3 months, you can already receive your booster shots.
Ma'am, can we just explain a bit why it's important na bakit kailangan magdaan sa doktor and why it's important for you to exactly know kung pwede kang homologous or heterologous?
These are different platforms of vaccines, sir. And when you are immunocompromised, your body is not different from a healthy individual. So meron hong mga types of reactions ang bawat bakuna na maaring hindi po appropriate para dun sa kalagayan ng immunocompromised individual natin. So for example, ang nasa listahan po natin ng immunocompromised are those with cancer, are cancer patients, no, yung active cancer patients, yun pong nagre-receive ng immunosuppressive drugs na nakakababa din ng immunity nila, yun pong may HIV, ayun pong nakapag-organ transplant recipient. So ito pong mga estado na ito, kailangan po talaga nakiklear sila ng physician kasi iba-iba yung platform. Like for example, meron hong reaction ng mRNA vaccine that will be different from the reactions of J&J or maybe AstraZeneca. So kailangan pinag-aaralan din po because these individuals are vulnerable.
How aggressive will you be in promoting the third dose or the booster? Will you be as aggressive as you had been for the general vaccines, no, yung 2 dose? I mean, how important is it that people get a third shot?
Yes, ma'am. No? So, first, hanggang sa ngayon, ang posisyon naman ng Department of Health and our experts, mas madaming mababakunahan ng primary series, mas makakapagprotekta ng population. Kaya lang, there are specific individuals that based on science and evidence, it is medically indicated that they receive the third doses or the booster doses. And this has been provided for in our scientific studies. And these are our senior citizens and our immunocompromised individuals. And healthcare workers were included, and it was said that they may receive because of their vulnerability to infection. So kung ano man pong pagka-agresibo natin dun sa primary series, magiging agresibo rin po tayo para dito sa booster shots because it is medically indicated for these certain sectors of the population.
You don't see this being as needed by the general population
Not just
later.
Not just yet. We still do not really have enough evidence to state that the general population would really need it at this time. Ang kailangan lang po talaga itong 3 sektor na ito ay maibigyan po natin sila.
Okay. Ma'am, sa kabilang banda naman tayo ng ating populasyon. Kamusta naman po ang rollout ng vaccination for minors? Before, we did discuss, even among parents, there was some hesitancy. Kamusta po ngayon?
Mataas naman po ang ating nagiging bakunahan sa ating mga minors, no, this 12 to 17 years old. Actually, pag tinignan ho natin unti-unti in the past weeks, we have improved and increased our outputs for the minors. At ang maganda rin po na naipapakita nito, yung adverse reactions po natin among our adolescents ay hindi po kataas, no? It's just less than 1%. So we are so far so good, and hopefully the other adolescents, their mothers will be bringing them to the vaccination site for their vaccines.
You said COVID cases are surging in Europe, no? And Austria, beginning Monday, nag-impose ng nationwide lockdown. The Netherlands, partial lockdown. What can we learn from their experience?
Well, ma'am, actually, we are trying to study, what's happening in Europe right now. And what we have found, based on evidence, would be that for some countries in Europe, they have eased their restrictions as early as June because they have high vaccination coverage. So yung isang bansa doon, tinanggal yung masking policy nila. Yung isang bansa naman, nagbukas sila agad-agad ng kanilang mga sektor at industriya. So cases are increasing because we know that even if you have high vaccination rate, pero pwede pa rin naman po kasing mahawa ang mga tao sa sakit kahit bakunado. So these are the things that we are trying to learn right now. And katulad nga ng sabi namin, in the past, since the start of the pandemic, once pumuputok ang kaso sa ibang bansa, like the Western countries, after 3 to 4 months, we see that their becomes an increase in the cases in the Philippines. So binabantayan po natin talaga maigi at nagpapaalala tayo sa ating mga kababayan.
Are you worried about any particular measure na ka-implement lang natin for easing restrictions na baka maging high risk tayo as a result?
Well, actually, ma'am, if we look at what we are doing right now, I'm not really worried about the interventions that we have recommended and is being implemented. What I am worried about would be how it is being implemented and how people are reacting to these interventions that we have done. Katulad po ng mga malls natin ngayon. Sa alert level 2 po, ang malls, 50% lang po dapat ang capacity sa indoors. Pero nakikita natin that this is not being implemented well. Hindi po na-enforce yung ating capacity. So, dyan po ako natatakot. Kasi yung amin naman pong mga binigay na interventions, pinag-aralang mabuti yan ng ating mga eksperto. May safeguards po tayo dyan. But if we cannot enforce it properly and implement it properly, we are really getting worried about that.
Mamulitin ko lang po yung isang, that one detail, no, na actually paulit-ulit na but it seems so important now. Yung masking and keeping mask, that's a real factor, that's a real differentiator with how Europe in particular opened up because we've seen reports and we've seen videos when they say open up, talagang pati yung outdoors, talagang pati yung masks, wala yung ano. Dito, kahit paano, nagmamask talaga yung mga tao outdoors. That's a real differentiator, that's a real source of confidence for us.
I agree. I am confident because I've seen how we have the behavior of our citizens have improved from the first time that we had the pandemic until now. Na-imbibe na yung practice na nakamask tayo, na naka-face shield kung kinakailangan. Sa ibang bansa po kasi marami po talaga na kumukontra dito sa paggamit nito. But if you look at it scientifically and medically, kahit nung unang panahon pa, kapag may mga ganito pong sakit, no, na respiratory illnesses, ang mask po talaga ay primary defense natin against this kind of pathogen. So ito pong pagmamask natin, magiging malaking bagay po ito kasama po ng pagbabakuna natin.
Ma'am, let me move forward with what you said a while ago. Sabi niyo kasi, it's not a question of policy anymore. It's actually a question of implementation. At sabi nga ninyo, doon kayo natatakot eh. The policy is clear, but the implementation is so-so. The malls, you cited as an example. Moving forward po, so how do we resolve this issue? The policy is down, the policy is in black and white, and still we're not getting the implementation we want. So what has to be done? What do we do? How do we push it forward?
Yes, we've talked with already, with local governments and also the different regional task forces that we had been reminding them that they need to monitor. And DILG has to help us also, of course, enforcing this kind of policies. But this kind of policies, kumbaga po, pinag-aralan, may basihan naman, hindi po natin pwedeng baguhin. Ayaw din naman po natin that we will restrict again because we saw that we cannot enforce. It is now up to local governments and, of course, the help of our establishments to implement this kind of safeguards so that we can maintain the safety of our citizens.
Ma'am, let me put this way, ma'am. If things go on as they are right now, yung kinakatakutan yung implementation, it goes on for the next few weeks, what could possibly happen to us?
Well, we have projections. No? In our projections, the assumptions included would be mobility, the compliance to minimum public health standards, and the response of the local government from the time period from detecting to isolating. So if all of this, like mobility will increase up to 100%, and then the minimum public health standards compliance definitely will be reduced when we increase mobility. And then the response of local government ay humaba uli ang detection to isolation. We will see an increase in the number of cases. And based from our projections, baka tataas tayo by December 15 up to again 20,000 plus active cases. Kung saan ngayon nga po napapababa na natin, tataas po tayo uli talaga.
Ma'am, just
Okay,
to go
so
to
when
another...
that happens, sorry. So
Go ahead.
God forbid it happens, but if it does by December 15, what kind of scenario are we seeing?
Well, instead of having this continued slowing and decline in the number of cases, we will see again the slow increase in the number of cases. Although we're not saying that by December puputok uli, peak uli ng mga numero ng kaso. Pero compared, no, if we can just sustain what we have done and what we are doing right now, we can continuously decrease the number of cases until the end of December. Pero kung talaga pong hindi natin maipapatupad ng maayos ito pong mga interventions na meron tayo ngayon, yung pagtaas po uli ng kaso ay mararanasan natin.
So kung hindi maipatupad, with the Christmas approaching, what are you most worried about? What kinds of scenarios for Christmas, New Year in particular? Ano po yung kinatatakutan niyo?
We are worried that cases will start increasing again. And if that so happens, and then kailangan po natin uling magsara ng mga iba't ibang sektor, remember we are implementing the alert level system. Yung alert level system po kasama dyan ng case trends. Pag tumataas na po ang kaso, yung alert level system, nasisignal niya, at pag nakita niya ang isang area ay tumaas na doon sa threshold natin, mapupunta sila sa higher alert level. Pag napunta sa higher alert level, mas marami na uling restriction. So we won't have the Christmas that we want. So we are asking our kababayan na sana po tulong-tulong tayo para po sa Pasko, ganito pa rin po, bukas pa rin po ang ating mga industriya.
Ibig ko sabihin, gusto niyo bang, halimbawa, maliliit lang na parties, gano'n. Siyempre, yung mga magkakamag-anak ngayon, nagre-reunion
Plano na.
Kita-kita na eh.
Vaccinated na uli. Malalaki na uli yung mga family.
Saka yung quarantine, nabawasan na yung number of days, di ba? Ng mga balikbayan.
So, yung mga magkakapit-bahay, nagiinuman na uli. Are you worried about those gatherings?
Of course, that is always something to worry about, no? Pero nagbigay na ho tayo ng abiso. Nasabi naman natin, we will not prevent yung reunion ng pamilya. Pero ang advice natin, sana lahat bakunado, fully vaccinated, gawin natin sa labas, i-maintain pa rin natin yung distance, at kung maaari, i-maintain pa rin ang bubble. Dahil this is not the time to be complacent. Kahit po bumababa na ang mga kaso, naandyan pa rin po talaga yung risk na pwedeng tumaas uli ang ating mga kaso at magsara uli ang ating mga industriya.
Ma'am, nandun na po tayo lahat sa, hopefully, lahat bakunado. I think lahat na magkakamag-anak kayo, nagtatanungan na, bakunado na ba si tito, si tita, mga anak, mga pamangkin, lolo, lola, and so on. But leveling up, should we start asking each other, kailan ba yung second dose mo? And what should we tell our relatives na lumampas na ng 6 months yung second vaccination?
Up until now, no, experts are saying that whatever vaccines we received since the time that our vaccination program started in the Philippines is still effective against severe infections and deaths. So wala pa hong kompleto talagang ebidensya para sabihin na, pagdating ng 6 na buwan, tapos na yung effective or effectiveness ng iyong bakuna. Wala pa hong ganun.
Okay.
What about yung pag-open up natin ngayon, no? Dahil halimbawa yung nasa yellow list na nando ng US at napakarami talagang may mga kamag-anak na nasa US na pangalawang Pasko na hindi uuwi. I mean, naghahanda po ba tayo sa pagdagsa ng mga maaaring magbalik bayan?
Tama po yan, ma'am. No? So kasama na sa projections namin yung increased mobility plus the added capacity, no, ng mga taong darating sa NCR at sa iba't ibang probinsya pagdating ng Pasko. So kasama na ho yan sa pinoproject at ina-anticipate natin, getting ready for that. But what I can tell you would be, when we started discussing ito pong border controls and we've shortened the quarantine period for our yellow countries and the green countries, pinag-aralan po natin maigi. Tinignan po natin ang mga datos ng mga nanggagaling po sa yellow countries compared to the green country, compared to the overall or the totality. Nakita po natin mababa lang talaga ang mga nagpo-positibo galing dito basta fully vaccinated. Nakita rin ho natin yung incidence po ng bansa nila. Pag pumasok din sila dito sa ating communities, might be a little similar, no, to the incidents that they will be coming into when they go to their community. So we decided, and has been decided by IATF, basta may pre-departure ka 3 days prior going here, and then 3 days pa rin pagdating dito. And that can be able to determine, no, para sa atin kung kailangan natin silang i-continue i-isolate o pwede na po silang umuwi at mag-self-monitor.
Nabanggit niyo po yung quarantine days upon arrival in the Philippines. It's down to, ano ba ngayon? Down to 4 or 5 days?
3 days
3
yung
days.
yellow.
For yellow.
Yeah.
Okay, are we expecting
Yes.
it to go even lower by the time, I mean, before Christmas comes around?
Well, this is not really something that DOH is looking at, no? Kasi nung nakipag-usap na po tayo sa IATF, yan na po yung talagang may basihan pa tayo ng siyensya.
Yusek, yung UK now is grappling with the sub-variants of the Delta variant. Meron na po tayong ganung problema dito.
We have been monitoring since the start that it has been detected and reported dun po sa mga ibang bansa. Ito po yung sublineage ng Delta, AY.4.2. Ito po, wala pa po tayo na-detect dito sa ating bansa with our continuous genome sequencing results.
But it's possible, dahil kung ano-ano na pumasok sa atin, it's always
Opo.
possible na pwedeng dumating dito because it's more infectious daw than Delta.
Well, the
Sana
threat,
mali ka, Ami.
the threat is always there, no, ma'am? Kaya that's why we like to still control the influx of travelers coming in our borders. The threat is always there because the virus will continuously mutate. Kaya po hindi tayo pwedeng basta biglang magluwag ng husto para sa borders natin. And kailangan sa community, meron din tayong kaakibat na kapag dumating sila doon, may safeguards pa rin tayo. As to this variant, sinasabi po, initial studies pa lang, hindi pa kumpleto pag-aaral, it's 15% more transmissible than the Delta variant. Otherwise, the other characteristics are mostly similar with the Delta variant.
What about in the regions, ma'am, outside of Metro Manila? Ano po ang mga ano pong improvements doon, if any? At saka anong mga areas ang medyo left behind, kumbaga, compared to the national average?
Well, pag tinignan ho natin, basically lahat po ng areas natin ngayon sa buong bansa ay nasa low risk na po. Meron nga ho tayong 2, 3 na nasa minimal risk already, and that would be Regions 10, Region 8, and BARM. So lahat po yan nag-low risk na, pati po yung kanilang healthcare utilization. Although tinitignan pa rin natin maigi ang ating Region 9 kasi nasa 50% ang kanilang utilization ng ICU. But other than that, the rest of the regions right now ay nasa low risk tayo.
Will the election campaigns be a threat? Are you seeing that as a potential source of pagkalat ng virus?
That would always be a threat, no? Whatever activity that will have congregations o yung mga gathering po ng tao will always be a threat na para magkaroon ng transmission ng sakit. Pero kung maipapatupad nga po ng maayos ito pong ating mga protocols, dahil ang COMELEC din naman po ay sumasangguni sa Department of Health on how they should be implementing stricter protocols para po sa mga kampanya at saka sa election. So sana po ma-enforce. Katulad ng sabi ko, safeguards are there, the policies there, protocols are there. It is now a matter of enforcing it.
Okay.
Yung ibang bansa, they're imposing vaccine mandates. Is there any discussion at all within sa inyo, mga health experts, kung pwedeng gawin to sa atin just through executive order? Kasi I understand the Justice Department said kailangan daw ng law. Pero are you discussing if it's possible na through an executive order?
Well, actually, hati po ang ating mga eksperto. Yung ibang experts natin would like to mandate for several or specific sectors only. Katulad nga nila kung sinasabi, kung para sa akin lang, dapat ang healthcare workers minamandate na may bakuna ka dapat kasi humahawa ka ng pasyente. You protect yourself, you protect your patients. Para naman po doon sa ibang eksperto natin, kasi nga voluntary po ang nature nito, they like to maintain that principle. So ngayon po, ang gobyerno, ang pinapatupad natin would be the spectrum of how we regulate. We do persuasion, we do nudges, and ngayon nagagawa tayo ng incentives and disincentives. Sa tingin ko po, hanggang dito muna tayo dahil nagsalita na po ang Department of Justice that we need a law for this, and it is being studied by different sectors now.
Okay. Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere, ma'am, maraming salamat po.
Ingat po.
Ingat
Thank
po
you,
kayo.
ma'am.
Thank you po.
And that's all for this edition of The Chiefs. We hope what was discussed here will keep the conversation going. Before we go, a reminder to our viewers, mask on, wash hands, stay safe, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
I'm Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star.
I'm Lucy Cruz Valdez of News 5.
I'm Ed Lingao, and we are One News.